It was a summer's day, the sun shining brightly over the bustling streets of Paris. Emma had always dreamed of visiting the City of Lights, and after years of saving and planning, she had finally arrived. The aroma of fresh croissants filled the air as she wandered down cobbled streets, camera in hand, capturing the magic of the city's charm. She hadn't planned on meeting anyone that day. In fact, she was quite content to experience Paris by herself, without any distractions. But sometimes, life has a way of throwing the unexpected your way. Emma was sitting at a quaint cafe near the Seine, sipping a cappuccino and watching the river flow by when he walked in. Ryan had just come from a long day of meetings. His briefcase in hand, his suit slightly rumpled from the heat of the day. He had no intention of stopping, but something about the cafe caught his eye, a feeling, a pull that made him walk through the door. Their eyes met across the room. Emma was instantly struck by the intensity of his gaze, the way his eyes seemed to soften when they locked onto hers. There was something familiar about him, something comforting, though they had never met before. "Excuse me," Ryan said with a polite smile as he approached her table. "Would you mind if I sat here?" "It seems like the only available seat," Emma blinked, a little surprised by the forwardness of the request, but smiled nonetheless. "Of course," she said, gesturing to the chair across from her. Ryan sat down, removing his sunglasses and setting them on the table. "I'm Ryan," he introduced himself. "Emma," she replied. "What brings you to Paris?" Ryan sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Business, unfortunately. But I'm trying to make the most of it. You know, see the sights while I can." "I can understand that," Emma said, glancing down at her camera. "I'm here for the exact opposite reason, purely for the pleasure of it. I've wanted to visit Paris for years." Ryan chuckled. "I should take a page out of your book. I've never actually seen much of the city, even though I've been here for days." Emma smiled knowingly. It's easy to forget the magic of a place when you're too caught up in other things. There was an instant connection between them, two souls who were both caught in the whirlwind of life, yet searching for something deeper. Their conversation flowed easily from one topic to another, covering everything from their favorite books to their views on love and relationships. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with hues of pink and orange, Emma realized that she hadn't looked at her phone once. Time had slipped away without her noticing, and yet, she felt more alive in that moment than she had in ages. Over the next few days, Emma and Ryan spent more time together. They explored the hidden gems of Paris, from the art galleries of Montmartre to the peaceful gardens of Luxembourg. Their conversations deepened, and what began as a casual connection grew into something more. Ryan had always been the reserved, practical type, his life meticulously planned and structured. He found comfort in the predictability of his career and the routine he had built. But Emma was different. She was spontaneous, free-spirited, and unafraid to chase after whatever life had to offer. Her carefree nature was like a breath of fresh air to him, challenging the very foundations of his structured existence. And Emma found herself captivated by Ryan's depth and intelligence. Beneath his polished exterior, she could sense a vulnerability he rarely showed others. She saw how he carried the weight of responsibility, but she also saw his longing for something more, a desire to experience life beyond the spreadsheets and conference calls. One evening, as they strolled along the Seine under the twinkling lights of the city, Emma stopped in her tracks. "Do you believe in fate?" she asked, looking up at him with a playful glint in her eyes. Ryan raised an eyebrow, considering her question. "I don't know," he said honestly. "I think life is what we make of it. Sometimes, things just happen by chance, and we make them mean something more." Emma nodded thoughtfully. But she couldn't help feeling that their meeting in Paris was no mere coincidence. She had arrived in the city with no expectations, no plan for romance, and yet here she was, spending her days with a man who seemed to understand her in ways no one else had. By the end of the week, Emma and Ryan had grown inseparable. Their connection had deepened beyond friendship, and the unspoken tension between them was undeniable. It was late one evening when Ryan finally gathered the courage to speak his heart. They were sitting on the balcony of their hotel room, sipping wine and watching the lights of the Eiffel Tower twinkle in the distance. The air was warm, the sounds of the city humming softly below them. "Emma," Ryan began, his voice low and sincere. "I've spent my life being careful, always following the rules and playing it safe. But when I'm with you, I feel like I'm finally living." Emma's heart skipped a beat. She had felt it too, the pull between them, the way their souls seemed to align in a way that was nothing short of magical. "Ryan," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I never imagined that I'd find something like this. I never expected to feel so connected to someone so quickly. But with you, it feels like I've known you forever." Ryan reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "I don't want this to end when I leave Paris," he said, his eyes searching hers for an answer. Emma's breath caught in her throat. "Neither do I," she replied, her heart racing. And in that moment, surrounded by the beauty of Paris, they shared their first kiss, gentle at first, as if testing the waters, but then growing deeper, more urgent. It was a kiss that spoke of unspoken promises, of two hearts finding each other in the vastness of the world. As the days passed, the inevitable truth loomed over them. Their time together in Paris was coming to an end. Ryan had to return to his job in London, and Emma's vacation was almost over. The thought of being apart seemed unbearable, but both of them knew that the connection they had formed couldn't be ignored. On the day Ryan was set to leave, they stood at the train station, their hands intertwined, reluctant to say goodbye. "I'll miss you," Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I wish I could stay with you." Ryan's heart ached as he looked at her. "I don't want you to go. But I'll figure it out. I'll make this work. We'll make this work." And with that, they kissed once more, promising to stay in touch, despite the miles between them. Months passed, and despite the distance, Emma and Ryan's relationship only grew stronger. They traveled to visit each other whenever they could. And their love continued to blossom with each passing day. Ryan's world became brighter with Emma by his side, and Emma found that her heart had found its home in him. Finally, after a year of long-distance love, Ryan made the decision to leave behind his predictable life in London and move to Paris. He knew that life with Emma was worth the leap of faith, and he was ready to embrace the unknown. Emma was overjoyed at the decision, and soon, they were living together in a charming apartment in the heart of Paris. Their love had withstood the trials of time and distance, and now they were ready to create a life filled with adventure, laughter, and the promise of forever. It wasn't long before Ryan knew that he wanted to spend the rest of his life with Emma. One evening, as they walked along the Seine, the very place where they had first felt the spark between them, he stopped and turned to her. His heart pounding in his chest. "Emma," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "I know we've been through a lot together, distance, uncertainty, and challenges. But every day with you feels like the best day of my life. I don't want to spend another day without you." Emma's heart fluttered, her breath catching in her throat. She had an inkling of what was coming. "Will you marry me?" Ryan asked, pulling out a small box from his pocket, revealing a beautiful ring that sparkled under the city lights. Tears welled up in Emma's eyes as she nodded, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, Ryan. Yes." And just like that, their love story entered its next chapter, one filled with promise, commitment, and the shared joy of knowing that they had found their way back to each other, no matter the distance or obstacles. Years passed, and Emma and Ryan continued to build their life together in Paris. They faced challenges, as every couple does, but their love never wavered. Through the ups and downs, they grew stronger, and their bond deepened. They traveled the world together, explored new horizons, and created memories that would last a lifetime. But no matter where they went, Paris remained their home, the city where their love had begun and where it would always thrive. As they sat together on a quiet afternoon, looking out over the Paris skyline, Ryan took Emma's hand in his eyes filled with love and gratitude. "I don't know where I'd be without you," he said softly. "You've changed my life in ways I never thought possible." Emma smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. "And you've shown me what true love really is." In that moment, surrounded by the city they both cherished, they knew that their love would last forever. Subscribe to the channel to hear more love stories like this one. Thank you.